Hey folks, this is John Boyum of the Let's Talk Beef podcast, coming at you today from southeast Minnesota as the family and I went back to Minnesota the other day. Got out of the west for just a little bit. We'll be heading back in about a month or so, but we got some things we need to take care of back here, back at home, and I got a wedding I'm in and such not, so got to do that kind of stuff, and we're glad to be home and seeing a lot of friends and family, and so it's been a good time, and we'll be here for a little while longer. But don't worry about the podcast. So I'll keep. I've got enough recorded that we can do this for a while, and we'll just keep plugging them out every 2 weeks, and hopefully you guys keep listening. And I really do appreciate everybody that already has been. It's quite amazing to see people downloading this thing and listening to it and getting all the positive feedback. I really do appreciate that. It's good to get that positive feedback. I really appreciate it. So, but this week the podcast consists of Amanda Radke. I actually did this podcast just last week. I drove out to South Dakota after I got back to Minnesota and recorded it with her. I've been trying to. Amanda was on my radar to get on the podcast right away. And actually, we had lined up to do the podcast, I think 3 different times, but every time we lined up to do the podcast, South Dakota got hammered by snow, so we had to cancel 3 times. So I'm glad it worked out this time. I went out there. The weather wasn't the greatest. It was cool and windy and whatnot, but it didn't snow. So we got together and had a great conversation. Amanda and I did at her home outside of Mitchell, South Dakota. Where she farm ranches with her husband and her dad and her mother, and she does also a lot of other things. She blogs and writes for a magazine and does a lot of public speaking and whatnot. So, but just a very well-rounded agricultural family right there. They've got their hands kind of in a whole bunch of different things and trying to be diversified and whatnot, and they're just great advocates for the beef industry, and Amanda's been doing that for the past 10, 15 years. So, and she's just a great voice and been trying to do, for most of you probably heard about her trying to get on the Ellen Show and talk to Ellen about beef, which didn't come to fruition, but I think she reached a lot of people, and that's really good. So great to spend time with Amanda. I'm glad that she let me come out there and hang out for a few hours. It was a lot of fun. So I do hope you enjoy the podcast. It was a lot of fun to put together, and if it sounds a little weird, I have been fighting a cold for a little bit, so hopefully you can understand me. I listened to the whole thing. I think it's all right. So but bear with me and do enjoy. But first, before we get to that, I got to thank my sponsor again, Casper Enterprises, Dave Casper of Southeast Minnesota. If you're looking for any organic plants or all-natural plant help, give Dave a call. He's an organic plant agronomist is what I call him. So I already saw him here when I got back to Minnesota, and he was already telling me about plants and new clients that he's picked up out in Montana and Michigan and whatnot, and just all the stories he already has. So, but he's a great guy. So if you need any help with anything like that, give Dave a call at 507-458-7659. Tell Dave that you heard about him on the Let's Talk Beef podcast, and he'll be glad to help you out. So thanks to Dave of Casper Enterprises. So now, here you go. Here's the podcast with Amanda Radke of Mitchell, South Dakota. So thanks for listening, guys, and do enjoy. So Amanda Radke, we are in Mitchell, South Dakota. Finally, we've been trying for, we started like in February trying to get together. And I think we had 3 blizzards take us out, so we finally get together here now in October. So I just want to let you introduce yourself really quickly, and then we'll start talking a little bit more.
Sure. So my name is Amanda Radke, and I farm and ranch with my parents and my husband Tyler here at Knowles Limousine, and I'm a writer for Beef Magazine as well as other ag publications, and I do a little traveling, speaking to ag groups, as well as reading my children's books, Levi's Lost Calf and Can Do Cow Kids, to elementary schools.
Grew up here, you're farming with your parents, so how long has your family been here, I guess?
Sure. So my grandpa Alvin just passed away here last week, so he was kind of the founder of Knowles Limousine here. He bought this place. They moved around quite a bit, but want to say the 70s. He bought the farm or no, 60s. He bought the farm where my dad grew up. And then 1982 they bought their first limousine bull at an all breed sale, and so that's kind of how we got started in the seed stock business. And I say we, my grandpa Alvin and my dad Dave.
Okay.
So we've been in the limousine business, I guess, since the early 80s, and so I would be the third generation here,
Okay.
raising the fourth generation, our 3 kids, ages 5 and under.
Okay. So did you grow up here?
So just the farm right
Yep,
next door,
I saw the
about
note.
half mile down the road. And so the way we got this place, it's kind of an interesting story. So
Let's hear it.
Tyler and I graduated from college in 2009. He's originally from Minnesota, and he had taken a job in Worthington working for JBS there, and I was back here on the farm, and we got engaged and started looking for acreages and had really tapped out the market. I mean, we had given up basically. Like,
Yep.
it's just not our time. We were looking for houses in town, just cheap places to live, for the time being. And about a month before the wedding, I went for my final dress fitting with my mom, and I said, if only the folks to the north would sell their acreage, it would just be like the dream spot, because this pasture here right behind us kind of connects the farms.
Okay,
And
yep.
it's a pretty location and just close to home. And that night they called and said, we're moving to town, do you want to buy our baler? And it's like, no, we want to buy
No.
the whole place, so
Yep.
I didn't know what they were going to ask. I ran to the bank the next day and said, I have no idea what the asking price is on this, but whatever, we got to make it happen.
Yeah.
And so thankfully we had a creative banker.
Yep. You
was
got to have
willing
one of those.
Yep, willing to work with us. I mean, we were 22 and 24 years old,
Yeah.
and buying this farm wasn't exactly like in the cards at that stage
Yeah,
in life.
you
It
weren't
was-
planning on it
no,
at all.
it was a pretty big chunk of change, right? At such a young age. But
Yep.
we moved in about a month after our wedding. And
Okay.
so it's been really advantageous, just the location being so close to the home base where I grew up and where we still operate, and being able to work in conjunction with my
Yep.
parents too. And we do a little bit separate things. So when we moved home, I guess, and this is the advice I would give to other young people, is don't come home and think you're going to split the pie in half. I mean,
Yep.
that income has supported your parents and their family, and to just divide that in half isn't fair to them, nor is it fair to you. It's not sustainable. So what can you do to add to the pie, whether it's by bringing in additional income or diversifying? And so for us, I guess I've always been a freelance writer and speaker, so there was that. But Tyler raised Maine and Jew cattle in Minnesota, so he brought that breed over here, and we also added a fall female sale in addition to selling bulls in the spring. So
Okay.
just kind of doing a little bit something different.
Yep.
And boy, when we were young, we did everything from, renting out some of the extra sheds we hadn't filled up yet, to we
Yep.
even had tech kids live in our basement for a year just to help pay the
Oh, yeah.
mortgage and, try to get ahead, at an early age. So
Yeah.
I guess that's been our big thing, is trying to be disciplined and be thankful we're here, but know, it can turn
yeah.
south in a hurry too. So
At the time it was crazy, but now looking back, you wouldn't change it.
right, exactly. Yes, yeah.
So how did your grandfather get into cattle? If he was technically the first generation.
Sure. Well, he grew up on a farm
Oh, did he?
too, south of Mitchell, like the Parkston, Dimmock area. But
Okay.
yeah, they had, just like the old McDonald's farm, the couple dairy cows, the commercial cows, the pigs, the chickens,
Yep.
the sheep, the works. So when he moved here, it's an interesting story because he bought a bunch of land, and my grandma always says that the neighbors would laugh at him because they're, oh, you poor farmer, you're never, farm kid. He had an 8th grade education, and they're like, you're
Yep.
never going to pay for this, you're never going to make it work. And he had his land paid off in 3 years, and he
Oh,
was
wow.
just like a frugal man. Grandma always jokes that, the neighbors would make fun of his farm equipment because it wasn't the latest and the greatest, or
Yep.
he was just the type that he just really watched his pennies, and really is inspirational to me because he just was. He knew what he wanted to be in life, which was he wanted to be a farmer and a rancher, and he
Yep.
wasn't going to get distracted by anything else. So he made a lot of sacrifices and lived comfortably, till
Yep.
his final days. So, but yeah, the limousine thing was kind of my dad's way. He graduated from college and said, okay, there's maybe some opportunities we can make a little premium on the cattle we're raising versus just having, the commercial Angus and Hereford
Yep.
operation. And so getting into the purebred business and starting to sell bulls was Dad's way, in his
Yep.
generation of adding value to the operation. So trying to build upon that. And I guess maybe we're in a transition of sorts here too with our patriarch passing away, and now, you know, my dad's maybe talking retirement in the next 5, I would say 10 years, you know, realistically. He's been saying he's going to retire for 5 years already, you know, but we'll see. We'll see. But so there's going to be some growing pains here in the next couple years, and seeing how we kind of transition and move into the future.
So how did your like, I'm really fascinated by that. How did he just find this place and kind of buy it? You said he just kind of bought it. Like, how did he find this place, or how did he put it together?
Oh boy, I think the farm used to be a dairy, and I don't know why the guy sold it, but they had moved a couple times in their early marriage. I mean, Grandma talked about the dirt floor they had in some of their houses,
really?
And the corn burning stove, and you know, washing the cloth diapers. I mean, all stuff probably every farm wife dealt with in the early days, but. Yeah, I'm not sure why this spot really came to be or what, but this just kind of became home, and they never left, and he just kind of slowly expanded the land, you know, as he went, and the kids worked on the farm, and you know, just like every other farm family probably.
So did he do anything special to pay it off in 3 years, or just saving his money, super frugal? And
I think he, well, my dad would say he was lucky. He just knew how to make money. You know, like in those days, if you worked really hard and were smart about it, you got rewarded for it. Now you can work really hard and still lose a lot of money. So I think it might have just been, you know, right place, right time. Oh, and I will say he bought a lot of land in the 80s. So when, you know, foreclosures were happening and people were, you know, going belly up, that was, he took advantage of those opportunities. So I know, you know, like right now that we're not in an 80s situation. It's a little bit different, but we are seeing a lot of producers struggling. And so, you know, if a guy is smart, there might be some real opportunities, I think. But, of course, you have to have the cash ready to roll. You know, I did take advantage of those opportunities.
So your dad came back. When did he come back?
So he would have graduated from college, I suppose, the early 80s or end of the 70s. And he was a county agent, 4-H agent for a few years over in Howard, about 40 miles from here. And Grandpa wanted to move to town. He was like an early retiree. He was successful and was ready to be done. And so he said, you know, Dave, do you want to come back home? And so that's when my mom and dad moved here. And, well, I guess they would have got married in 85. So Dad was kind of coming back and forth in the early 80s, just helping. So they got married in 85. I was born in 87, and then they moved, I was like 3. So by the 90s, we were here, you know, full time, and Dad was ranching and running cattle.
Is that what he really wanted to do, was ranch?
It's his passion.
Is it?
Yeah. So he did work for the Department of Agriculture all those years. He was a dairy inspector and like a chemical fertilizer spill complaint kind of guy. Inspector, I guess you'd call him. But his real passion was, you know, raising cattle. And so it's, you know, right now in 2019, it's been a tough go for everybody, and you can see morale isn't so hot, you know, even with our own family. I mean, like you said, it took 4 attempts to get here, but 2019 started with January, where it was negative 26 degrees with negative 54, you know, wind chill. And then we went from blizzard to blizzard to blizzard to rains to about 50% of the fields went unplanted. Couldn't even get cover crops in. In fact, the neighbor, they planted 1 field of cover crops, and the next day we got 4 inches of rain. It just plagued us.
I drove here. There was water everywhere.
Yeah, just plagued us all summer long. And then September, I went and spoke at Husker Harvest Days down in Nebraska, came home to a flood. So one pasture that Tyler and I rent, of the 80 acres, I think about 5 acres are still not underwater, and so and we couldn't get the cows home because the road was flooded in 3 different spots, you know, to get them home. And so it's just been a weird year weather-wise, and then you know, combine in the ongoing trade wars and market uncertainties and, you know, rising debt loads and rising input costs. It's pretty tough out there, and I'm sure you're seeing it with other interviews that you've done, or maybe everyone else is a little more optimistic than me. But
I think they want to be optimistic, but I mean, like, morale's just like they know. I think they know that at some point it's got to turn around, but just like, all right, come on, let's start seeing something
Right.
go in that direction.
Well, 2018 was tough, and so you can only sustain so many years where it's just
Yep.
really, really hard. And then, of course, if you're getting close to retirement age, your tolerance for it is a little bit lower than, I'm young and dumb and 30. I'm like, let's keep going,
Let's
it's
do it.
fine, I'm
Yep.
good. So.
So what about you growing up on a ranch? How was that for you? Do you have siblings or anything?
I do. So 2 younger siblings. The youngest is 9 years younger than me, and so that was another thing I had to think about. Was my family was still, my parents still had a kid at home when I came home, so it's not
Yep.
like they were still supporting a little family there and weren't really ready to talk transition or how I might fit, and so I kind of had to find a way for me to fit without being, a nuisance. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I kind of had to carve out my spot, and then without having a lot of answers, and I see a lot of 20-somethings come back home and they're like, well, what's the game plan, mom and dad? And sometimes mom and dad just aren't ready to answer those big questions, and I think. You know what, if I'm in my early 50s, I hope I have all the answers, but heck, I'm 30 and still trying to figure life out. I hope, I can see why it's hard not to have just the concrete plans and kind of see how things play out. But, we always harp on those transition plannings and succession plans. And one thing I see ranching families do too is they either bury their head in the sand, don't want to talk about it, or they might oversell the opportunity to their kids and say, come home, there's a spot for you, and maybe there isn't. So I guess one gift my parents have given me is they were always really realistic and like, you're going to need an off-the-farm job to make this work. And and so that's why I write as much as I do is to pay for the cows, and hopefully the cows pay for themselves, at some point. But it's a lot of an initial capital investment and getting things rolling, and so the extra revenue certainly helps coming in, pay for the feed bill and everything else. So
growing up then, were you big into the cattle, or was it like always kind of your thing, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so it's me and two sisters, so we were always just treated like like a boy, like you were expected to do the work, and I guess just being the oldest, I probably was the one that got asked to go help outside the most. But I always loved it. We showed cattle in 4-H and FFA, and that was kind of a passion for me. I went to school in Mitchell, so that's like one of the bigger schools in South Dakota. Got teased a lot for being a farm kid, and just, it wasn't cool to be in 4-H or FFA. And
really?
You certainly, when you'd had to skip the sleepover because you had to work calves the next morning or whatever it might be, it didn't go over so well, with some of my town friends.
That surprises me.
Yeah.
Just kind of the rural feeling of South Dakota, like you wouldn't think that would be a thing.
Yeah, no, it definitely was. I mean, I still had great friends, just I was always different, and that was fine. Maybe that helped me in life, too, to like...
I know exactly where you're coming from. That's exactly what I went through.
Yeah, and so we've actually opted to send our kids to a smaller school where almost all of them are farm kids, so it's just the norm, like, So I knew it was the right school when I walked in for the tour, and she said... don't mind the mud in the halls. It's calving season for these kids at home, so we drag it all out. And I was like, yep, we're in the right place.
Yep, so that's cool.
I'm good with it. So
that's neat.
But yeah, no, I mean, that was my thing, and I always loved promoting beef. So one thing I did growing up was the Beef Ambassador Contest, which is a checkoff funded program, and I did it from age 10 to I was a national beef ambassador my senior year of college, or high school, freshman year of college, and I got to travel the country and promote beef at places like the Boston Marathon, or some lobbyist events in Washington, D.C., or promoting veal in Oklahoma, or not Oklahoma, why Oklahoma? California. Sorry, I was everywhere.
You were everywhere.
Yes, everywhere, but no, not too much veal in Oklahoma, probably. But so that was really eye-opening for me because I got to meet so many industry professionals and leaders, and it really opened my eyes to some opportunities in the industry as a whole and where I might fit. And so, through that experience, I was able to kind of make some connections with Beef Magazine, and that really has been rolling now for 11 years, and that's been a huge opportunity for me. Like I said, to be able to write and work from home, and kind of the best of both worlds. So
So what about your sisters? Do they have any? Were they like you and big beef people, or?
Yeah, my middle sister probably less so. I mean, she did the showing and stuff,
Yep.
but she probably always got the short end of the stick in the barn. I was probably the bossy sister that chased
Yeah.
her off more than I should have. But she owns a clothing boutique pretty close to Mitchell, so she's where I get to shop at a discount, for all my fashion needs. And then her husband works in construction. And then my youngest sister, Kaylee, she just graduated from South Dakota State here a year and a half ago.
Okay.
She's working in egg lending over in Sioux Falls. But I think long term, she wants to get back to the operation, or at least, have work in the business in some capacity. So, and we welcome the help.
Yeah.
So,
So you graduated high school and went to SDSU?
I did.
What was your major? What did you study there?
I studied egg communications. I had internships in the summer, worked for USDA in DC, spent one spring break at NCBA. I know you said you're headed there in Denver, so I got to
Yep.
spend a week job shadowing them. And then I worked for Beef Magazine in Minneapolis for a summer too. And so from there, my project for the summer was how do we, drum up traffic to the website. And at that time, I had done this blog as an ambassador and said, well, what would you think about adding a blog to the website and kind of building a community? And so that launched in 2008, my senior year of college. And then when it came time to graduate, they wanted me to go work in Minneapolis. And I said, I don't know if I'm a city girl. I don't think I can do that. But, could I continue on as a contractor and keep doing the blog from home? And, at that time, 10, 11 years ago, that working from home was a foreign concept kind of a deal, even though there was internet. But it was a little tougher of a sale compared to now.
Yeah.
But they said yes, and so I was able to write from home and kind of have that flexibility to be here on the ranch too. So it really was a dream opportunity for me.
Yeah. So have you always been a writer, or did that just kind of fall into itself that you saw it as something to do?
No, that was always my favorite subject in school,
Yeah.
reading, writing. So I probably always had a knack for it. And then I did a lot of speaking contests in 4-H and FFA. That was sort of my thing too, and so it just was a natural fit for me. I actually started political science at SDSU, so thought I was going to be a lawyer. But then it took me about one semester and a really interesting class. I thought, I don't think this is my thing. I still love politics, and definitely, for a hot minute right at graduation, I thought, should I just keep going to law school? But I'm really glad I've done this.
Yeah.
I'm probably more of an entrepreneur than a lawyer at heart, so it's been cool to kind of just build on the writing. And
They didn't have mud in the hallways at the law school?
no, I doubt that. I doubt that very much. So, although there's really great opportunities in ag law right now. I mean, you can keep busy all day long transition planning for farms.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And all kind of legal battles that, especially, with the Obama administration, the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers kept some farms really in hot water. And so I know there was a lot of lawyers that were keeping busy just trying to keep the government off some of these farms' backs,
So you met your husband in college. What's his background like?
Yeah, so we met on the meat judging team. The first day of class, Dwayne Wolf, our professor, said, look around you. You might be sitting next to your future spouse. And, we both laughed, like, yeah, right. But then,
Were you literally sitting next to each other?
No, we weren't that close. But I do remember, looking around, I'm not. No, I don't think so.
Nobody in here.
Yeah, we became friends first, cutting meat in the meat lab and then traveling on the judging team together. His family actually owns a butcher shop in Minnesota, and he grew up showing calves. Actually, I guess you could say he's kind of first generation beef producer. His family had a dairy growing up, and so he actually started showing dairy steers, and then kind of took an interest in the beef cattle and started researching breeds and kind of self-taught. So he got his first cows when he was 12. His parents supported that dream of his and kind of built it from there. So he's always kind of focused on high percentage mains, so he could show in the breed shows and not necessarily in the crossbred, I guess. And it's been a little interesting change of pace compared to the limousine that I'm used to. But like I said, it's been kind of a cool addition because we sell some show heifers in the fall, and they look pretty cool and hairy and clubby and out there. So they're pretty cute to have around.
So is that his main thing, is running your main stuff, or does he have another off the farm job type of a situation?
So he when he was working at JBS, right before we got married, there was an opportunity for him to work for Lynch Livestock, which is a hog buying company. So he did that for several years, and then the last couple of years, he's been working for Farmers National Company as a farm manager, and so he represents absentee landowners, land investors, people that need help working with the local farmers, that kind of thing, doing leases and also does real estate sales. So you're seeing pasture, farm ground type stuff. So it's pretty interesting work.
Yeah. So you guys are well diversified here.
I guess it's educational. From a personal standpoint, I love real estate and hope to invest in farmland someday. So I feel like we're learning a lot from his job, just on our own research, I guess. But he gets kind of an interesting vantage point dealing with the investors that live in Hawaii or something that own this farmland, and having to educate them about the ag economy. And then on the flip side, he understands what it's like to be the farmer renting the land and how tough that can be sometimes. And so being the middleman is kind of a tough spot once in a while. Yeah.
So so now you're doing the main thing here. Are you guys, is it two kind of separate things, or how does your dad's limousine stuff and how does that work together?
Sure. No, so we have limousine as well. Early on, everything was kind of joined together, and my dad's a very cut and dry type of guy, and so accounting, management, everything, he kind of decided no, we're going to be separate. You kind of do your own thing. And at the time, I was really frustrated with that. Why can't we all just, blend together, work together? But now, 10 years in, I think it's been a blessing because, Tyler could be his own man and not answer to his father-in-law, and kind of establish, how he wants to operate and run his cattle. And, we've slowly built up our own limousine numbers and sold bulls as well. So I think when it comes time for my dad to retire or step down, it's not going to be this huge thing for us because we already have, our equipment lined up and kind of running our own cows. And so then it just kind of becomes, well, which cows of dad's do we want to invest in? Which equipment do we need to still buy to fill in any gaps? And we're kind of just ready to pick up leases as he, leaves them off. And like I said, it gave Tyler an opportunity to just be his own person and kind of call the shots instead of answering to an in-law all the time. So, but yeah, we still work, connected and still kind of shared goals and, maybe sometimes different breeding decisions or, different debates come up on how to take the limmies in whatever direction we're going. But ultimately it's going to end up, kind of merging together into one business.
So do you guys do a sale, or how do you guys sell bulls?
Bulls are private treaty, and then we also do stock shows. So we'll go to Kearney, we'll go to Black Hill Stock Show, and then the Sioux Empire Livestock Show in Sioux Falls. So.
How many bulls are you selling a year?
About 40.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wow. So how many cows do you guys run altogether?
About 150 between the two locations.
Okay. Yep. So what's the split limousine to main?
For us, it's about 50-50, but Dad would have,
He doesn't have any mains?
No.
You didn't get him to transfer over a little bit?
We do have a few token Angus that we raise Limflex bulls out of, I guess. So, yeah, just a few. That's about all Dad will allow. So.
Yeah. So I guess, you've kind of covered it, but where does, as your dad's getting ready to retire here, like you said, 5 to 10 years, who knows what that looks like, but where do you see the rest of your operation going after that?
I think we'll keep growing our numbers. That's the goal. There's some limitations with availability of grass. There will be some transition of land, Grandpa's land and that kind of thing, and I could see some opportunity to convert some of those farm acres back into pasture. That would be my ultimate goal. Hard to give up that kind of rental rate, though, on the crop side when you're going back to grass, but I really am interested in holistic grazing and just adding back to the land all the time, and so I see a lot of advantages to keeping cover on the ground, whether that's having that cover crop rotation on the farmland or just the rotational grazing and trying to improve the land every year. And I think our consumer likes that too, so I think there's some opportunities there. But Yeah, always looking for opportunities, if land is right and we can get either a lease or purchase agreement put together, I think we want to keep growing the herd. It's just, tricky.
Well, when a bunch of it's underwater, what do you do there?
Yes, right. Yeah, that is pretty tough when one of our main leases is flooded,
Yeah.
Hopefully next year. I'm not going to pray for a drought, but I think a drought would be maybe welcome after the last couple years.
Do you feel like, I mean, say what you want about climate change and whatnot, but do you feel like the weather's changing here, or is it just kind of a weird phase, or what do you think?
You hear first it was global warming, and then it's global cooling, and now it's just climate change, and it's hard. I mean, I'm not an expert on it, and I've always probably been a little bit of a skeptic, but I did just see an article here that said there was like a massive blizzard in October, like 100 years ago. Like it just, so I don't know. I think the weather does change, and right now we're just in a tough spot. And I do follow SDSU's climatologist and try to stay up to date on, what's ahead. And she did predict that it would be another wet, cool fall, and here we are, and a lot of the crops are going to stay right where they are in the field. But it wasn't too long ago we were in a drought too. So I don't know if it stays this wet and this cold, and the growing season stays this narrow for too long. It's going to be pretty tough to put together feed or crops or anything really. So I don't know. If I had the real answers, I'd be a millionaire, and I'd be riding on a yacht with Al Gore probably,
You and Al will be real tight.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's funny. I don't know. It's interesting to some producers that are kind of, not sure what's going on, but I've had some others that are just like, it's a hoax or whatever. So it's been kind of interesting to feel different people's ideas or see kind of what they think, because they kind of think it just goes through those ebbs and flows, and right now we're just in a very weird ebb or flow, whichever one you want to say.
And probably like the older producers especially, they've seen every high and low imaginable in their lifetime, whether it's markets or the weather. So it's like, to me, I pay attention to those people that have been doing it for 50 plus years, because they've seen all those hardships, and they know if you can ride out the lows, the highs are pretty great too. So it just, or when it's going good. But I also have friends that are seriously contemplating moving south, because it's just tough and wet and muddy and yuck right now. So it's just not fun.
Yeah, I don't know where the best place to be is right now. So it's just kind of there.
Right.
So I guess we're going to transition here a little bit. You've kind of had a whirlwind of, 4 or 5 weeks here.
Yeah.
You went viral on a posting and whatnot, but I guess let's start at the beginning. Where did this whole thing start, and how, and then we'll work our way through this story.
So I was at South Dakota State University about a month ago speaking to the Black and Bridal kids about being an advocate for agriculture and ways we can use social media to, dispel myths and share information about, beef production or whatever commodity. And that day I'd read or watched a video from Ellen DeGeneres that had encouraged people to be neat and eat less meat. And I continuously tell people I didn't really care if she was eating meat or not. Like, that's not the point. But what bothered me was the misinformation that she'd shared, and that, not eating meat would benefit the animals, the planet, and our health. And so I wrote this open letter to Ellen, just asking her if we could sit down and have a conversation. And I kind of dispelled some of those misconceptions and kind of closed it with an open invitation to say, like, hey, I'm here, I welcome you to the ranch, or I could come to Los Angeles and we'll have a good time and talk about beef, and just hope to connect two very different worlds. And so I had the blog written before I went and did my speech. Didn't quite get it published. Got done with my speech and sat in the parking lot at Animal Science Complex, clicked publish, made the 2-hour drive home, which, by the way, the roads are all flooded, and I ended up having to take all kinds of crazy detours to get home. But my phone was just blowing up the whole way home. And I'm like, what is going on, And so I get home and realize this thing was going viral in a hurry. So I think, last time I checked, it had been viewed like 3 million times on social media. So, and you're probably my 22nd interview I've done in the last month. So it's I guess when the going.
I try to get this interview way before that.
I know. Yeah, this has been you've been on the list for a long, long time. But it's kind of cool we can talk about this now.
I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Yeah. So I got to talk on couple TV stations. One crew came out here, and the cows were in the interview, and one was in Sioux Falls, so very urban audience. Another cool podcast that I got to do was called What the Fat, and they are people that follow like a ketogenic, low-carb diet, so they love meat already. But they had some pretty pointed questions about what it feels like to raise an animal, knowing we're going to harvest it to eat. So I got to talk about the circle of life and difference between grass-fed, grain-fed, that kind of thing.
How did that go? What was that? What was their reception to you and all that?
It was really fun for me because I preach being an advocate and reaching to consumers, and this was really putting that concept into action and getting to answer some. And he was a friendly interviewer. He, like I said, he liked meat already. So, but yeah, he was a city kid and really wanted to know, so you love these cows and you raise these cows, and do you butcher these cows too? It was. It's a tough pill to swallow, kind of. And so I think it went well. We talked about how in today's society there's this Disney effect where, every movie is the animal who walks and talks and has this huge range of emotions, and the owner or the farmer is usually the bad guy or the, background character that doesn't have an importance in the story. And any other exposure that young people have to animals now is either their beloved dog or cat, or, petting zoos, or, things they see at the fair. But other than that, they don't have this, close working relationship with animals like farm kids do, where you can see calves born in the spring, but you also know, your 4-H market steer at the end of the summer is going to end up in the freezer. And so, some people would paint that as cold and callous, but for those of us in agriculture, we really understand the value of that animal and know that that animal is going to provide for people and, enrich human lives, not just with meat, but with hundreds of byproducts as well. And so those are kind of the things I talked about on that podcast. And yeah, it's just cool opportunities all around. And of course, there's haters too.
Oh, yeah. So now you've done all these these interviews and podcasts. What else has been happening?
The vegan trolls found me, of course, and new comments and hate mail were coming in every 30 seconds, all day long. It took about the third day, and they really found me, and it was like a horde of them, just like a swarm of mosquitoes just came, and they were photoshopping my picture and calling me, zombie serial killer, and just all kinds of crazy stuff. And my philosophy on them is, and it's really hard not to internalize some of the comments, especially when they're like, we're going to find where you live, or, you shouldn't have kids because of who you are as a human being, or, that all in the name of compassion of this beef animal, right? And they're threatening to kill you. But that was pretty tough, but I've learned to not engage with those people. It's like putting a quarter in a toy you can't shut off, It's just like, if you feed the beast, they'll keep going. So I like to focus on just the 95% of folks that are quietly and silently reading the comments. And you're never going to hear from those people, but if you're the one that sounds reasonable and sane and kind and, lead with facts and not hysteria, hopefully that resonates with people who are maybe on the fence or aren't sure how they should feel about eating meat. And, I can just be authentic to myself and not be baited by the cult-like, feedback that you get. But it's taken 10 years of advocacy too to get to that point where you're like, well, that just let it bounce, it's fine. So
how did your family take that negativity towards you?
Tyler, they found his email, and so he was getting it, shame on you and Amanda kind of emails. My parents are used to it because I've been doing this for a long time. So folks that might be new to me, they wouldn't know this, but in 2006 at the last National FFA convention that I competed at, Carrie Underwood was invited to sing. And at that time, she had worn this V is for Vegetarian t-shirt. And again, it's fine that you don't eat meat, but she was donating all this money to the Humane Society of the United States, which is an organization that claims to save dogs and cats, but they actually want to abolish animal agriculture and eliminate meat, dairy, and eggs from the dinner table. And so they were kind of new on the scene, and so I really wanted to spread the word about them. And so my challenge at that point in my life was to encourage the FFA members there to buy tickets to the concert, because FFA would have to pay her no matter what. But then to walk out after the opening act and when Carrie came on stage. And so Facebook was brand new then. That was my first like foray into social media advocacy.
Yeah.
And at the time that was really tough. I mean, my parents thought like activists were going to like come knock on our door, burn down our barn or something. I was getting a lot of hate mail at that time. FFA was losing sponsors. That was pretty tough. It was tough, but I had the beef industry was hugely backing me, very supportive in any press I needed at that time to help me mobilize this thing, and I just knew I was on the right page or right road that I needed to be on. But yeah, so like I said, my parents were used to it, but I have 3 little kids now, and they were I guess my dad's biggest comment was, are you so focused on this and all these interviews that you're not, being the mom you need to be, which of course there's always going to be mom guilt no matter what you do. And I hope my kids look back on this and maybe they'll hear these interviews and say, oh, mom was passionate about something and stood up for what she believed in, and maybe they'll do the same one day for whatever, their heart desires or what their calling is in life.
I was going to go down that. So what, I guess, did you kind of shield them from that, or did they kind of know what was going on, or how did they kind of...
No, they're so young. They're 5, 3, and 1, so they have no idea. They know that mom has to work, that mom writes and speaks and, does that kind of stuff.
Has a screen in front of her face a lot?
Yeah, pretty much. But they don't know or aren't aware. But, hopefully you can exemplify... like I said, whatever their convictions might be in life, to stand up for what's right, and really at the core of it, because I constantly get accused of like, well, you're biased, you're a rancher, you just want people to eat beef. Well, yeah, I do, but at the core of it really is protecting our freedoms to farm and our freedom at the grocery store. And so you're seeing politicians right now that are on the campaign trail, and they're proposing that we tax emissions on farmers for perceived emissions that are not based on fact or reality. And they want to place sin taxes on meat because they want to, curtail our consumption of meat and kind of get consumers to go more to plant-based diets. And so we're not a nanny state, and food security is national security. And so to kind of punish farmers for doing their jobs and keeping us from famine and war and just awfulness doesn't make sense to me. And so really at the core of it, that's what it's about for me. And so I don't care what people eat, but I don't want our choices to be limited or taken away from us.
Yeah. So did people walk out on that Carrie Underwood concert?
They did. You can go watch it on YouTube if you search Carrie Underwood plus FFA. It got removed once, and then we added it back on, and I think it's still stuck now, so it's there. But yeah, you can see me at 18, 19 years old, talking about HSUS and so. That's
pretty crazy. I guess I kind of remember that, but yeah, that was you. That's crazy.
Yeah, and like I said, that was the first year of Facebook. I mean, it was brand new then.
That
so
was.
It was kind of the first go at being an advocate, quote unquote.
So you just started stirring the pot right away.
I guess that's been my thing, so.
No word from Ellen.
No, I did have 2 people reach out to me and say they had connections with producers who worked with Ellen, that she was aware of the letter, so she at least read it.
Yep.
I was really hopeful because, like we talked about before we started recording, she had a Netflix special out earlier this year that said like, "Hey, vegans, don't hate me. I'm eating a little meat. I think would you say fish and eggs maybe,
I think is
so
what I
not
heard.
beef, but it's a step.
Yep.
And so I was like, oh, cool, Ellen, because she had previously been donating to HSUS, and she's very compassionate. She cares about the animals, and I just thought if she just had an opportunity to meet a real livestock producer, maybe she could see it from a firsthand experience. And we do have a lot of shared values, and that we do care about animals and we care about nutrition and the environment, but we just have different ways of getting there.
That's the biggest hurdle I think we have.
Yeah. So the wind really deflated from my sails when I saw she had a sponsored content on her show for a plant-based company, and I thought, nope, she's not gonna conflict with her sponsorship that she has, and have a beef producer come be on the show.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's coincidence or not, but I had a lot of people tag me and say she had just been at a football game with George Bush, and got a lot of flack for sitting with some conservative Republican, type and she had this big thing like, we can be friends with everyone, be
Yeah.
nice to everyone, even if you
That's
think differently.
That's kind of her tagline.
Yep, but that was really the theme of my letter was like, hey, we might be different, but like I think we could have some fun together and,
Yep.
and talk about agriculture, and
You threw it back into her court.
It would be okay, but yeah, so some people have asserted that wasn't just a coincidence, that was a PR move because she needed to appeal to her, more conservative listener.
Were you a fan of
base.
Ellen before, or like watched her show? Or
I mean, I had seen her Netflix special, and I've seen some of her shows. I'm not like a regular,
Yep.
fan viewer, but she stands for kindness. It's a platform anybody can get on board with, I think. So
yeah,
I don't.
it's hard to be against that.
Yeah, I can't fault her for trying to connect people and make people feel good, and so yeah, I dabble in like graphic T-shirt sales, and so. I had come out with a shirt that said, work hard and be kind, because I feel like that really exemplifies the heart of rural America. I mean, we're out
Yep.
here working the land, taking care of the livestock, and hey, we have kind hearts too. And I talked about some of the charities and nonprofits in agriculture that are really near and dear to my heart, and kind of did a wrap-up letter that said, Ellen, even if you don't want me on the show, I hope you can see the heart of rural America. And that's, kind of what I segued to, that
Yep.
I needed to end it on a positive note,
Yep.
even if maybe I disappointed some by not actually getting to Los Angeles. But I'm going to still call this one a victory.
I think so. I mean,
Yeah.
you said over 3 million people
Yeah.
read it. So
And
I mean,
that's not counting like the media impressions either,
Yeah.
with all these podcasts and interviews too. And so, yeah.
a lot more people know Amanda Radke's name now than
I guess. Good, bad, or
good,
not.
bad, or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
But yeah, that was good. I mean, it was. I mean, that's doing it in the parking lot and just kind of shutting your phone. I mean, that's. I mean, I'm sure there was. I guess I don't know. Was there hesitation to doing it, or was it always just like, I'm going to do it no matter what, or before it hit published? Was there a little bit like, I guess, did you see what was coming? Did you see what happened coming at all?
No, I didn't anticipate the type of response. I write 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, never fails. And so to me, that day, it was just a good topic to write about. I
Yep.
needed content, so, let's make it happen. And so it was just a check mark off the box. Like, this is something I had to do that day, and, it's done. And so you always hope something resonates or takes off like that. But you just, there was no way to, because there's plenty of voices that had already written, on the Ellen topic or kind of addressed it. But I
Yep.
just had no idea mine was going to,
Take
like I said,
off.
take off like that. No. So.
That was being on the road, what I was doing at the time, going from ranch to ranch and just kind of seeing it all, just kind of like, I was like, whoa, this is going crazy. So
Yeah, I had one friend send me a video where she was scrolling through Facebook, and she was like, there's like 100 of you, just my face. Because if people hadn't seen it, I took a picture out in the pasture with a sign that said, Ellen, can this beef producer come on your show and talk about cows? And
Yep.
so she was just like, your face is everywhere. And I'm like, sorry, And at the time, we were dealing with flooding and all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
We're behind on weaning and everything else. And I was like, well, this is very ill-timed right now, because I got a lot of other stuff going on. But, when the opportunity comes
Yeah.
that you can talk about some beef misconceptions and share your story, I'm going to practice what I preach, and I'm going to go out and do it. So,
Yeah.
it's been an honor to be that voice right now. And
Yep.
I just tell people I hope I served you well, because it's, there's a lot of studying involved to get those facts and figures right, and to say it in a way that
Yep.
it doesn't just appeal to producers, but that consumers can kind of digest that information too. So it's hard, it's tricky.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
So I guess going now in another direction, just talking about the beef industry in general, which is what you were kind of trying to do with Ellen, but where do you see the beef industry growing? What do you see as positives? What do you see as challenges? What are we doing right? What are we doing wrong?
There's a lot of unrest right now.
Yeah.
That's a loaded question.
It is very loaded. I know. I know it is.
I recently wrote a blog post that said, who should the cowboy really trust? Because right now there's kind of a lot of mudslinging between the various cattle organizations, and a lot of big accusations, and things like, who are these organizations associated with, and do they have like the real individual rancher's best interests at heart? I don't know if I answered any questions more than asked a lot of questions, and encouraged producers to do their homework and ask a lot of questions too. But I am hopeful that, if there is somebody that can shake the industry, where it needs to be shaken loose and fix some things that we're seeing, I think President Trump's administration could do it. And so, seeing producers tweet and interact and share their thoughts with the president is exactly what needs to be happening. I mean, we need to be vocal. We need to be calling our congressmen and women and writing letters and engaging in the process, because the troubles that we're facing in this industry aren't going to get fixed just by us sitting at home and crying about it,
Yep.
And I think if producers can weather through the next year or two, maybe there's going to be a bright side.
Yeah.
I'm hoping so anyway. It better, because
Yeah. I guess that's kind of a big thing that I have is like, what is there a way for we're all in the beef industry, so why are we working so hard against each other inside of it? Like, what's, where does that working togetherness start? It's like, whether you're a conventional guy or grass-fed or all natural, you're still producing beef.
Right.
So why, just because you don't necessarily want to do it that way that guy's doing it, you don't need to bash him and make him feel belittled or whatever.
Right.
Or make somebody that's in the grocery store and not buying grass-fed beef because they can't afford it.
Right.
Why make them feel bad about it? So why, I guess that's so, I just find that so weird that, we're in the same game, but we don't like the people that we're playing with.
Right, exactly. And there's more than one way to skin a cat, and so it's just like politics. Everybody sees the world a little bit different through a different lens, and that's fine. But yeah, for me, when it comes to being consumer facing, we all need to ride for the same brand, and not try to tear each other down, in the public eye.
Yep.
So, handle your little hissy fits at home, and
Because I think that's kind of what I want the podcast that I'm doing right here to be, is kind of like, who, know your rancher. You might not feel like you want to buy conventional beef. That's fine. But you want to buy grass-fed. So here's an opportunity, hopefully, that I can bring, is interviewing grass-fed ranchers throughout the country, and you can, listen to them, feel about, or hear them out, and find one that you connect with and like. And if on the other side of it, you can't afford the grass-fed stuff, but you want to know where it comes from, you can listen to them and kind of find where you want to be, and just, accept that there's different ways of doing things, like you said.
Right.
But it's all, at the end of the day, we're all the same. We all have, for the most part, the same values of wanting to produce a good product that we're going to feed to our families and raise, it's healthy for our children and whatnot.
And that's what's the great thing about the United States, is we have so many choices. I mean, if you're a beef producer and looking to gain a premium product, slap a label on it, do something a little bit different, and chances are there's a consumer demographic that wants what you're producing. Where it becomes dangerous for me is where, our elitists, the ones that are the affluent, and they have the disposable income to buy, every specialty product on the market, organic, grass-fed, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But instead of just buying that product, they want to regulate it to become the norm or the standard.
Yep.
And so all of a sudden, the affordable, conventional product that's perfectly safe and nutritious becomes inaccessible to the food insecure or, the lower half of society that can't afford those premium products. And so that's what becomes really dangerous to me, and does a disservice to the general population. And so sometimes those elitist ideologies are great for the premiums, but they're also scary, because
I always wonder, if that's what you want to do, are you going to find these people jobs that pay better? Or where, you can't just do one and expect the rest to follow.
Right.
There's so many more steps to it.
Right.
So why, it's just,
And I listened to economist Jason Luss talk about how the U.S. consumer is becoming so fickle that we're probably not going to increase beef demand here in the United States. It's going to be the global consumer, because, the middle class is growing throughout the world, and they don't want to eat rice and beans. They want to eat meat, finally, because they can afford it. And so that's going to be, our consumer that we need to focus on. And we are seeing some trade deals get done, like in Japan. Historic things happening that could be really exciting for the beef producer, but it's not going to happen here necessarily. So
speaking of foreign countries, what's your thoughts on origin of country labeling?
Oh, country origin labeling.
Yeah.
That's another loaded question. So, I think,
I'm full of them.
There's there's two schools of thought on that. So, when country of origin labeling was in effect, it was deemed to be, non-compliant with WTO rules, and so it was dumped. And at that time, beef prices were really high, and coincidentally, they hit the tanks in that same year. Now, some would argue it's because of country of origin labeling, and others were saying no, it was simply the ebb and flow of the market, and there's other factors at play. And I can't quote for sure, but whether that was like something happening in Australia or whatever it might be, there's other things happening there. So now there's this push for country of origin labeling because we're importing a lot of meat. But I think one thing people don't think about is yes, we're importing a lot of beef, but it's like lower, like hamburger, where we're exporting, higher value products. So we're a net exporter, and so it's tricky. I think we've seen some studies where the consumer isn't willing to pay a premium for American beef. Like there's other CAB or certified Hereford or whatever that they're going to pay for versus just American label. At the same time, it would be nice to have American beef distinguished in the meat case. But voluntarily, producers can do that if they think it will pay. It doesn't necessarily have to be mandatory. So that's kind of where I'm at. And on the flip side, I'm getting long-winded here, but
that's fine.
The opposition that
I got a lot of batteries.
Okay, good. the opposition that says they don't want country of origin labeling, they tend to be more pro electronic ID. Which is more for traceability, animal health purposes. But the folks that are pro-cool don't necessarily want the EID. And to me, they kind of tie together. I mean, one's a marketing thing and one's an animal health thing, but you can't have one without the other. So you can't have country of origin labeling without also having electronic ID and being able to trace those animals back to their origin. Yeah. So sometimes I think if these folks that are on opposite sides could get together and really kind of knock out their differences, they'd find they have a lot of shared values and all want the same thing, and they want the U.S. producer to thrive. Just, again, different ways of getting there.
Sounds good.
And cheap food, not just affordable, but also kind of devoid of nutrients, too. I mean, there's just a lot of processed grains. I mean, that's really...
But that's just it. I mean, that's what the consumers wanted at that time, because it was the baby boom. So they had 13 mouths to feed, so they wanted the cheapest food they could possibly get. And now we're getting to the point where those mouths have moved to the cities, have no idea, and they're just, like I said, they have food aplenty. They go to the grocery store, it's there. So now they want more restrictions and whatnot, and they have money, and they have the I want it now mentality. So they want farmers to change now.
Like that, right?
And there's no way, they don't get that at all.
Right. And they're either going to do it with regulations or what they buy, but yeah.
And at some point, at what point, which I hope we never get to, but at what point does the regulation become so much that it just, you're trying to tip it back, but you tip it too far, and you can't come back from it.
Right.
So where does that, hopefully we never get there, hopefully we don't see it, but that point is somewhere. Where is it?
Right.
Do we get to it?
Oh, I think it was flirting with that there for a while.
Probably with what was the water thing?
The waters of the U.S. and wanting to curtail dust and regulate every mud puddle. I mean, it was just government overreach at its finest. And that was some scary stuff. I mean, I interviewed some little old lady that she was going to lose everything because the Army Corps of Engineers was just picking on her and, lawsuit after lawsuit. And, there was farmers getting sued for plowing their own ground, or it was like they had to ask permission to do anything. And it just, encroaches on our liberties and our private property rights. And obviously these producers are doing a service for the country. I mean, yes, they have a marketable product to sell and they're in business, but go look at other countries around the world that are food insecure, and there's a lot of unrest and not happy people. Just scary stuff.
So why, we have so much food, why is it not getting there? Or what can we do to get more of it there? and make us less wasteful.
Right. Yeah, I mean, 1 in 4 kids goes to bed hungry at night in the United States, which is just crazy to me because...
If you say, if 1 in 4 goes to bed hungry, 40% of all food is wasted, like that just doesn't make...
There's a lot of disparities here in the U.S., for sure.
Yeah.
We're spoiled, though. Those of us that can't afford to eat.
Oh, for sure.
Don't think anything of it, you
Yeah,
know?
it's,
And that's what frustrates me, like on the emissions thing. It's very frustrating for climate change to be pointed right at beef, which is a nutrient-dense food, you know, when we can, well, okay, coming up, it's Halloween. We're buying buckets and buckets of candy, you know, that doesn't nourish anybody. It doesn't add to, you know, maybe our quality of life because it's fun, but it's not an essential to life. It's junk food, you know. But we're not measuring the carbon emissions on a Snickers bar.
No.
Or, you know, on the plastic wrappers and all the mini-sized candies and, you know, the one-time-a-year costumes that the kids wear or the Halloween decorations. I mean, all those have a carbon footprint. But yet, beef has become the target.
I don't get that at all. I don't. Why did they pick that?
Yeah.
Because exactly. Like you go into a gas station, and you look at like the candy aisle, and just think of like, you know, there'll be a box of 36 Snicker bars there, and you're going, I'm in a town that's got 17 or no, it's probably 17 is too many. Say like 10 gas stations, and they all got that. Plus you have like grocery stores and Walmarts, and that's just this one town. Now you times that by how many of, you know, so how many Snicker bars are there right now in this country?
Right.
Like the number, and it's not like they make a whole bunch and stop. Like it's continuously making them.
Yeah.
It's just like it just, and I know this is way out there too, but I always think about how much water is stored in plastic bottles inside of warehouses right now that never used to be.
Yeah.
Like we're drinking bottled water like it's going out of style.
Right.
And like bottled water, you know, bottles are in the ocean and all that stuff. But like, so how much water are we taking out of the water system cycle and just putting it into a building?
Right.
And putting it, you know, where it's not doing anything but sitting there waiting to make money for somebody.
When you have poor farmers in Colorado or California that are fighting desperately for their water rights so they can operate. And we're just so spoiled that we just got buckets of it.
Just sitting over, and you know, I got this
cases.
18-acre shed that's just top to bottom water. It's just sitting there, like it just like that stuff. Like I think about that kind of stuff all the time.
Right.
It's just so weird.
Yeah.
And then, do you follow what's his Frank something on Twitter?
Mintloner?
Yeah.
The greenhouse gas guru?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got that.
My buddy.
Is he?
Yeah.
I think he'd be amazing to get on the podcast.
He would. Yeah.
He has that tweet about like there's more wild horses, like 9.5 million wild horses compared to 9 million dairy cattle in the country.
Or like we hate to say it, but dogs and cats are cute little pets in apartment buildings. They have emissions too, and they're not providing nutrients or you know maybe they're improving mental health, I suppose, but they have no like actual realistic purpose other than enjoyment, you know. But they still create waste and have
They
a
create
footprint.
waste, and they're. I mean, I hate to say it because I have a dog and I love her and do whatever, but like they're wasting money to the point because I mean you're buying food to feed them, and they're basically sitting there.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's just like there's so many.
We need to get them like mini treadmills so they're creating energy.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But there's so many of those.
It's ironic.
It's ironic. You're fighting one point, but then you know, what do you think? Do you think things were that bad when like there was 30 to 60 million buffalo going through here, and like the cattle numbers aren't near that high?
Right.
And so it's just like
I always say kind of cheekily, like if cows were so bad, you know, cows outnumber people 4 to 1 here in South Dakota. So right where we sit, there'd be smog, you know, overhead. But Frank does a really good job of like breaking down the numbers. So like electricity and transportation, one is 25%, one is 29% of all emissions, and animal agriculture is like 2 to 3%.
Yeah.
And he says if every American were to go meatless on Mondays, it would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by like 0.36% is all. But yet we've been told for a decade now that you can drive your Hummer to work, but if you just skip a cheeseburger, you know, on Mondays, you're gonna impact climate, you know, health in a positive way. So it's mind-boggling. And I feel so that all dates back to 2006, kind of when I first got started too. The big thing was this discussion again, because the United Nations came out with a study that's titled "The Livestock's Long Shadow," and it contributed greenhouse gas emissions from beef cattle to like 30-some%. And that's since been debunked. But a lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth gets on its tennis shoes, and that's exactly what happened. And so we've been plagued by this, ever since. And Frank explains it like this: the way they got that number was on the beef side, they took everything from growing the crops to feed the livestock all the way to emissions created from refrigeration of the beef at the grocery store, whereas transportation, they only measured tailpipe emissions and not the manufacturing process of the car itself or anything else that goes into that vehicle.
And the fuel.
Yeah, any of it. So, it was just very skewed, not comparing apples to oranges. And I think, too, I think there's a nutrition component to climate, measuring climate impact, too. So, calorie per calorie, what are you getting from beef, that makes it a more valuable foodstuff, if we're looking at emissions compared to you have to eat a whole lot of broccoli, which has an environmental footprint, but you have to eat a whole lot of broccoli to get the protein you need to thrive in your day. And so what's the water consumption and the footprint of that vegetable? It just doesn't compare. So it just, but it's tough. All this common sense stuff isn't.
I think we could talk about it for the next 3 hours.
Yeah, and like I always say to people, science isn't sexy. It doesn't make good headlines, but, this hysteria really does, That's why we're seeing politicians talk about it, because it's easy talking points on the campaign trail, because there's only a few farmers in the crowd, but there's a whole lot of consumers that are like, hey, let's point the finger that way. It makes me feel better about myself, and they can fix the problem, and I'll just keep doing what I do, you know? So we need strong voices on this topic, because it's everywhere. It's literally every single day. And with these plant-based companies, they're claiming to be environmentally and nutritionally superior, and now lab meats are doing the same, and they're all unsubstantiated claims, but it still hurts the beef industry, when it's every single day in the news.
Yeah. So going off of that great positivity there. So I guess where's the opportunity in beef? What do you see for young producers or people that want to get into the beef industry? What advice do you have for them? Or you did have a little bit there early, but what else do you see there?
I think we're going to have to think outside the box. What worked for grandpa or worked for dad maybe isn't necessarily working in this generation. And that's a tough pill to swallow, because we operate in tradition and heritage and what we've learned from previous generations. And so it's really hard to break away from that mold and think differently. But commodity markets are in the tanks. And so if you're going to make ends meet, I think 90% of farms have off-farm revenue right now, or income streams right now, and that's sad. But if we look at a study of millionaires, the average millionaire has 7 different revenue streams, and so why should farmers be any different? If you're operating a business, how can you diversify your portfolio or add value in some way, so you're not just raising a basic commodity product that can be produced in Brazil or cheaply somewhere else in the world? What are you making or creating or offering to the marketplace that's unique or different or special that consumers want? And I think that's the reality that we're facing. But we're seeing people, make some huge strides doing exactly that, just being different or trying something new. I shout out these girls a lot, but I connected with them on Instagram earlier this year. They're the Ranch Wives Beef Co. And they're 2 women that they're both pharmacists by day, and in their free time they're working on their individual ranches in Nebraska and Montana, and every single day they're sharing positive stories about beef and their farm families, and they're endearing themselves to customers, and they have a subscription beef box. And I imagine there's a steep learning curve there, and that doesn't fit for everybody. But I'm kind of inspired by them, because they're finding a way to make it work and add value to their family's operations in a really cool way that's authentic to them.
Yeah, I actually follow them too, and I emailed with them a little bit. It's been a long time. I should email them back.
Yeah, you got to get them on the show.
Yeah, that'd be great. So at some point I will, for sure. But no, I think that I guess I didn't know that the average millionaire has 7 different.
You got to read The Millionaire Next Door by, I think, Thomas Stanley is his name, but it talks about the habits of millionaires. And so that's one thing also I see. I read that book, and it kind of showed like the habits of everyday millionaires and that they don't look like millionaires. They drive the old vehicles.
Yep.
Kind of goes back to like my grandpa Elvin. He didn't look like he was successful, but because, he kept his investments where they counted and, wasn't flashy, And
Yep.
so when we think of millionaires, we think of like the rappers and the celebrities and,
Yeah.
the people living these like high lives
Yep.
on Instagram. But actually, the millionaire might be living in a $150,000 house in the middle of town, driving a mediocre,
Yep.
$10,000 car, and just keeping their assets, close and investing wisely and just being smart. And I think social media can kind of work against our generation more than our parents or grandparents ever had to deal with, because I can see farm families like mine, and maybe they're going on a vacation, a really extensive vacation, or maybe they're, fixing up their old farmhouse to make it designer pretty, or they're doing things that I didn't think I could afford to do, and it can be really easy to fall into that trap of comparison.
Yep.
Like I said, that our grandparents didn't have to deal with, and
Yeah.
so really being realistic with your numbers and not just guessing. I think that's going to be critical for our generation, and
Yeah.
just taking responsibility for the fact that we live in a high consumerist, materialistic society, and we can all. Well, the Amazon boxes showed up here during the interview, so we're
Yeah.
all guilty of it.
Yep.
And I think, we can do better on both bringing in additional revenue and income, but also, keeping our expenditures tight and keeping our living expenses, in control. I did read that, like, the average farm family of 4, their standard of living cost is upwards of $90,000 a year. So can we curtail that somehow?
Yep.
If you can keep your family living expenses down, you have more money to play with and use on the farm too.
Yeah.
So it's tough. It's
Yep.
really tough.
So as that, you kind of laid out some of the negatives there of social media, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean, as what you do, I mean, you've had a lot of positives through it too. So what,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
what do you see as the positives for our generation and
Sure.
using social media to go further?
Yeah, so, I've been blogging for a decade, and that's been a great platform for me to write about what we're doing on the farm and then, be an advocate and do all those things. It's also been a great way for me personally just to promote my speaking and my books and that kind of thing. I noticed this year especially I've tried to master Instagram. So
Yeah.
previously I'd just been using it to post cute pictures of my family and just kind of, it was like a photo diary just
Yep.
for myself. And I realized, no, I need to use, if I'm going to be on social media, I want to use it as a way to bring revenue in for my family. And so in 2019, I created a website so that before it was just kind of word of mouth with my books and my speaking. And I said, no, I'm actually going to have this website, have the books for sale, direct people there, they can learn about me. But also I started adding t-shirts and that kind of thing. And it just started out as like this little thing. But I started using Instagram more intentionally and have been able to add a really nice, income stream just by some cheesy, farm-themed t-shirts. But
Yep.
they kind of resonate with the people I was trying to reach out to. And it's just been one more way to kind of add some money that, maybe whereas before I wasn't monetizing social media or using it as a tool for my larger goals. And,
Yeah.
right or wrong, I guess that's what I see a lot of people doing, and it seems to work and be beneficial. And also you get to connect with really great people that
Yep.
you wouldn't have met otherwise. And sometimes ranching can be really isolating, especially when it's tough. And we see a lot of mental health issues in agriculture right now. But just being able to read someone else's post and see, oh, I'm not the only one going through this right now. Or,
Yep.
calving season's tough and I'm really down and, it's not going our way. But,
Yep.
hey, I'm not the only one. And so you can have those conversations and not be so alone, too, I think is a great part of social media as well.
Yeah. So just kind of wrapping up here, what's next for Amanda Radke? Where's she going in the future here?
Boy.
You have all these things going on, but
Sure.
where do you go? Or where does it keep going?
Well, I guess I'll keep growing, my personal, I didn't even say my website, so it's amandaradke.com.
There you
so
go.
kind of keep that buzzing.
Better plug that.
Yep, going into the holiday season, so I suppose I'll have some Black Friday stuff coming up. But
Yep.
I'm working with my illustrator once again. We have a third children's book coming out
Wow,
this
cool.
spring. It's about peanuts, actually. So we're kind of putting our shingle out that we're teaming up with various commodity groups. And so Can Do Cow Kids was with the Georgia Beef Board. And through word of mouth, the Georgia peanut growers heard about us. And so writing
Okay.
about peanut farming, and
Yep.
who knows, maybe the pecan guys will call us
Yeah.
next, or cotton, or hogs, or whatever. So trying to tell ag accurate stories that, reflect the rancher and the farmer, and not, personalizing or humanizing the animals.
Have you always had ideas for children's books, or did that kind of come later?
Yeah, no, so the first children's book, Levi's Lost Calf, came out in 2011. I noticed there just wasn't a lot of egg-accurate books on the shelves, and I wanted something I could take with me to my speeches. I was traveling everywhere, and egg literacy and teaching kids has kind of always been a side passion of mine, and so having a book that I could take into schools was really valuable. And then Can Do Cow Kids kind of came about here this last year, so there was kind of a 7-year hiatus there, but now hopefully we'll keep it rolling and maybe punch out 1 or 2 a year here about anything and everything.
Yeah,
so
cool.
That's probably next on the horizon, and I guess trying to figure out that delicate balance between being a mom and hitting the road and speaking, and
Yep.
and trying to raise cattle too, and all the different directions that life can pull you. So
is there a big book in the future too?
like
A real
a grown-up book?
Yeah.
Well, I did have a romance novel written at one point, but I thought
nice.
it might be a hard segue from children's book to romance novels.
Yeah.
But I could see maybe something on like advocacy, or I found I have kind of a side passion of coaching high school and college kids, like mentorship type deals, whether it's competing in FFA contests or helping them develop their resumes for job interviews and career growth, that kind of thing. And so
Yep.
maybe an advice book of something of that nature might be down the road for me too. I don't know.
Well, cool.
Yeah, we'll see.
That's cool. So, finishing up here, I just want to say thank you so much for letting me come out here today.
Yeah.
It's been 6-7 months in the
I know,
making.
right.
But we finally got it together. Finally, it's not snowing, but
Right.
it's cloudy and windy and cold, so
Yes.
it's threatening. But I enjoyed this. This was great. I'm so glad we got to get together. I'm actually great it happened this way because we got to talk about Ellen
Yeah.
and do that.
That's perfect.
It worked out great.
So-
But thank you so much, and we'll stay in touch in the future more.
Yeah, hopefully it doesn't take 8 months to get you back here
Yeah,
again.
for sure. Well, thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you.
And there you have it. Thanks. First off, I just want to say thanks so much for everybody that just downloaded and listened to this podcast. It really means a lot. And I hope that I continue to bring stuff that you can enjoy in the upcoming weeks. So if you could, I would really appreciate it if you could share this and go and find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and like me on all those. Take the time to go onto iTunes and give me a rating. That really helps me out. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.